Have you ever thought about what happens when the pressure switch for your well system doesn't actually turn off? What could be causing it? Is that a problem? Today we're going to talk about it. But first, we have to talk today a little bit about what a pressure switch is. First thing is this. This is what we refer to as a pressure switch. How it works is you have your house power and your pump power connect on these silver springs. And when the pressure drops, so in this case, a 30-50 switch, when the pressure drops to 30 psi, it clicks on just like that. It'll run until it gets to 50 psi, and then you'll hear it click off again. So as we watch, the pressure is going to build, keep building, and then eventually stop. Just like that. So the switch is going to do that over and over and over. In this particular circumstance, this switch is short cycling, so we have a problem. This is what a pressure switch looks like when it's not installed. So the water will actually push up into here through the nipple, and it will push on the spring in the back of the switch down here. So what will happen is, as the water pressure pushes up, it's going to work with these springs in here, and this is going to be our pressure setting spring, which will then push these plates together. So it'll constantly click on and off just like that. So in the particular switch that we were just looking at, we're going to see the house power coming in, pump power, and then we can see that these contact plates are all the way closed because there's no pressure on this particular switch. So again, power, pressure switch, differential, right? So what'll happen is, if your system is not working correctly, it'll either not close when it ought to close, like in this case, it's got no pressure, so it's in the closed position, or it will stay open the whole time. Now, if we look really close, you're going to see inside of here a little tiny spring. So what can happen is you can have the right side open and the left side closed. And that'll mean that it's not on all the way. Sometimes what can happen is you might get it to where one side stays stuck like this. So we can see the left side stuck, the right side is up, and so there's not enough power to create the current. So you're not going to have water flowing, but it's because the spring is deteriorating. So you can sometimes have an issue with the switch itself. These are about 20-30 bucks, not terribly hard to replace. So you could always attempt to replace this first. So this brings us to our question of what happens when the switch doesn't actually turn off? Now, this can be a variety of problems. It can either be the switch, a leak, or you could just have a weak pump. But let's go with the most common issue that you're going to have. We know that we have a problem with the switch not turning off. My usual first guess is that we have a problem with a leak somewhere in the system. Leaks can occur in a variety of places and at a variety of times. It doesn't necessarily have to have a cause to get you started on a leak, if that makes sense. So we have a couple different spots that leak can develop. First spot we could have is in the drop line itself. That's going to be the pipe from the pitless adapter to the well pump. The second spot that we could have a leak would be the pitless adapter itself. That's the part in the well that's below the frost line that connects the drop line that goes to the pump and the main line which goes to the house. The third option would be the main line to the house. But you might be wondering, how on earth do I test each one of those? Great question. This is super easy. So we're going to go ahead, hook up a hose outside, get the water running, and we'll do a little bit more diagnostics. Alrighty, now that we're outside, we're gonna go ahead, hook up our hose to the spigot. And the reason we want to do this, again, is so that we can make sure we get water flowing. And it's easier just to have a spigot running than it is to try and fight with the faucet inside the house. So now we got that on, let's go take a look at the actual wellhead. Now that we have the water running, it's important that we come over to the wellhead. While it's running, we want to make sure that we look at the ground, we pop open the lid, and we listen to see what do we hear while the water's flowing. If we have a leak, we might notice after about 20-30 minutes of runtime that this area gets saturated. You might know as the water gets pulled down in the column, you might hear the leak in the drop line. If it's the pitless adapter, it's usually pretty loud and pretty obvious right up front. With this kind of thing, it takes a little bit of trial and error to get it exactly right. It's going to take you some time to figure out what's going on. So by running that hose, probably half hour, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, that'll help get you in the right direction of what is going on. Now that we've got the water running, and we've walked the property. We want to walk the property before we really get too far into this, so that way we have a good baseline. If there's no water on the ground, if the ground is dry, not mushy, that's our baseline. Now we're going to run the water for a bit. The reason we want to do this is if the water is running, that means the pump is flowing and the check valve that's in the home may not be influencing your results. So we have the water running, and let's just say we wait 20 minutes. We're going to walk back over to the well. We're going to look at the ground. We're going to look for saturation. Ideally, if we have a leak between the house and the tank, or between the house and the well, we're able to see that saturation in the ground, and that'll help us to kind of pinpoint where our problem is. The pitless adapter is either going to have a leak right at the wellhead itself, or you might be able to hear it in the well. It'll make like a hissing sound. The drop line, the longer you run that well, the more the water in the column will fall down. So as the water falls, you might start to hear a sound in the well. That's why you want to remove the lid. One of the most common failure points is that pitless adapter, and all that it is just going to be the pipe that connects the house line to the drop line, as I've just said. Leaks are most common at connection points, so the pitless adapter is just asking to have a problem. On screen, you're going to see the pitless adapter, and the purpose of it is to basically avoid the water line freezing, so it'll be underground, and it's really kind of a pain in the butt to replace because of the depth. Now, this may not exist in your particular area. A lot of more southern states or even more temperate climate areas, if you're not in the US, you might just have the pipe come straight out of the well. That's okay. Just means skip this step, do the rest of the steps, and it'll help you figure out where you're going. You just don't have to worry about the pitless being one of your potential issues. When it comes to the pitless adapter, it's important that whenever you get the system swapped out, so replacing the well pump, the electrical wires, even the drop line, you should probably consider preemptive replacement every 20-30 years just to avoid any kind of issues. I've seen plenty of them last much longer. I've seen plenty of them not last that long. Generally, I'm going to recommend stainless steel as your option for when you're installing a pitless adapter. A leak in the drop line is probably the hardest for you to actually find, and the reason why is that leak could be underwater, and you may not ever hear it or see it unless you exhaust the reserve in your well. Now, you might have a problem with doing that if your well produces more water than what's discharging. What do I mean by that? On a well, you're going to have what's called a yield. Now, the yield is how much water or recovery the well is receiving. So let's just use easy numbers for example. We've got 10 gallons as our yield. 10 gallons of recovery. If we're discharging 5 gallons per minute, we are only depleting half of the yield for that particular well. That means that as we're running the water's not actually going to fall down in the column. It's just going to stay exactly where it is. So you're not going to be able to see or hear that leak in the system. So generally the next step, if all of this doesn't work, is to go ahead, turn the water off. Wait a little bit. In the home, there's probably a check valve, so you don't want to deplete all the water in the house just so we don't get any kind of spurts. But basically, you just turn the water off. Let it sit. That check valve should keep the water from the house going back into the well and emptying the home. If after 20-30 minutes of the water not running, you turn it on and you get air into the line, boom, now you get a leak somewhere in your line. It gets a lot more tedious. You just have to go down, pull the pump out of the well, inspect the pipe, and that could help you figure out if the drop line itself has a leak or something to that effect. If the well pump itself is starting to get old and not able to work, maybe you've got a lot of grit and it's destroying the impellers, it might be time to replace the pump. Generally, whenever you replace the pump, you should replace the water line and the electric every other time, so that way you don't have to worry about the wires rubbing on the casing. You don't have to worry about stuff like this. Pipe's not that terribly expensive. Wire's not cheap, so that kind of sucks whenever you have to do that. But it's a good idea to do it every other time, so that way you don't have to worry about this becoming a regular occurrence. Generally, a well pump will last you 10, 15 years, so if you're doing it every 30 years, it's really not that bad. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Your water line should have a proper cycle length. Let me know below, do you have any weird pressure issues with your pressure switch or your well system? The problem is if you let this go on for long enough, you are going to have a shortened lifespan out of that well pump. It's not designed to just keep running over and over and over, or just nonstop the whole time. You'll burn it up, right? Even though you've only lived there for a couple of years, you might still run into some problems. Well pumps aren't cheap, so you don't want to burn them up. A common cycle length is going to be about 60 seconds. Ideally, you're at 30 seconds plus, but 60 seconds is what most manufacturers want. So you want to make sure you size the pump and the pressure tank appropriately to hit that 60-second threshold. If the thing's not cycling, that's a problem. You got to get it evaluated. If after you do all these steps, you're unable to identify the issue, like I said, you could try replacing the switch. You can always call somebody and have them do an evaluation, very similar to what I'm doing, and that'll help you figure out what's going on. Hopefully you found this helpful. I have videos posted every day on the World of Well and Septic, and I look forward to talking to you all later.